we're going to get our panel together. I'll remind you who's here. So remember that we've got the team. We have Professor Leask, we've got Dr. Green, we've got Mr. Chung we just listened to a second ago. We have Dr. Wong in charge of the project. Good. We have a good friend from Baptist University. Okay, from Hong Kong Baptist University. We're very happy to have the Center for Holistic Teaching and Learning, CHTL. Dr. Theresa Kwong, she's the co-principal investigator in this project, fostering the integration of local and non-local students for the enhancement of internationalization and engagement with mainland China. It's very great to have her here. She's just been promoted to the head of the center. Well deserved. I've known her for years. Even though she looks very young, I've known her for years. It's mysterious, but I'm really happy to see the promotion. And thank you, Theresa. Good to see you. Thank you. And what we'll do is I'm going to ask some questions in a minute, and I'll inform you, and then I think I'll type them in the chat. But we're going to ask a bunch of different students, so we'll get to her. And now we have one more guest who we weren't able to get to yet, and this is Professor Mike So, and he's from UST, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. He's in the Department of Information Systems, Business Statistics, and Operations Management. As I said, he's a professor, but he's also the director, the academic director, excuse me, of MSc in Business Analytics program. He's the co-principal investigator of this project, and we're very happy to have him here. And Mike, could you just say hi, and then we'll talk to you a little bit.
Yeah, so Mike from HKUST, yeah. So Chris Pan is my colleague. And if you have any question about the grouping, then probably I can share some insight.
Sure. And we had a cancellation with theirs. We've got some students who are going to give us student feedback, and Mike had a cancellation, so we'll ask him. We'll kind of springboard when we talk to Baptist University, and we'll kind of include it. We're a little bit local in that way, I guess. We'll look at Poly, and then we'll look at Baptist and our friends at Baptist and UST. Okay, so thank you, Mike. Okay, so now we're going to so we're at the panel now, and we're trying to think about—
John,
yeah.
Do you want to also introduce two important guests, student guests?
Yeah, I was going to introduce them when I get to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, I know it's I won't.
I think they are more important than
sure.
At least I am. Okay.
Okay, so our student guests here today, and we have 3 guests from PolyU, right? So we'll have— I'll say their names first, and then we'll just say hi quickly. So Miss Fran Wong, Mr. Select Lung, and Mr. Babak.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
Hello.
All right. Thank you very much. I sorry I don't have long descriptions of you guys, but thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll ask you some questions. Okay, thank you. All right, and also, Theresa, you have a student from Baptist University, Miss Natalie Zheng. She here today?
Yes,
okay.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Oh, very nice to meet you. Okay. All right, so now we can go back, and I think I introduced everybody. Okay. All right, so I'll get to our questions, and I think what I'll do is I'll try to put the question in the chat. We've got 2 questions, but I think we'll play it by ear, and we'll see how the time is. You know, it's I think one thing about online learning that I've learned, it's really hard to keep the time. We're doing pretty good, but it's face-to-face. You can kind of make signals and pinch people and do what you have to do to get them moving, but this is a little bit different. So anyway, so here's our question for today that we'll start with, and we're going to ask, ideally, what would you like to see as the defining feature of the new normal of internationalization past the pandemic? So in other words, we're in this stage right now. We're optimistic people by nature, right? And so we're hoping that someday this thing will be over. But we also know if we didn't learn anything, how foolish are we, right? So question again. And so let me state the question one more time, and then I'll start with our PolyU people, and then I'll respond. And if I don't do a good enough job, MS Wong is here to back me up for PolyU, and Ivan too. Oh, so PolyU is well covered. Thank you. Okay, so back to the question. Ideally, what would you like to see as the defining feature of the new normalization of internationalization, of the new normal, sorry, of internationalization past the pandemic? And hi, Fran, are you there, please?
Yeah, I'm over here.
Okay, good. So I think just we're going to try to be fast, but I think I heard that you wanted to study overseas, but you couldn't last year or the year before.
Yeah, we want to have an exchange. I plan to exchange Sweden, but yeah, it stopped because of the COVID-19. And yeah, I'm also thinking whether there will have the online teaching of the exchange, but there's not, so I didn't have the chance to have the exchange even face-to-face or online.
So how do you see the new normal?
Yeah, so surely I think the new normal should be online, I think. So let's see, we also plan to have a service trip to communicate with the American student in Guangdong. But however, it's suspended due to the COVID-19, and we only can communicate it online, like by WhatsApp or the other platform. So under this mode, in fact, we don't have the mode transportation between different places, and it forces us to stay at a place like in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. So the online, it's kind of a big change for you and what you planned, and you're trying to make the best of it in the future, I think,
Yes.
as we all are, of course.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And what about, can we hear from Select? Select, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, great. So I think maybe your case was similar. So ideally, what would you like to see as a defining feature of the new normal of internationalization past the pandemic?
Yeah, my case is quite similar to Frank, since I also wanted to transfer or to exchange to Finland, so instead of Sweden. So for the new normal, so what I say is that I guess it would be a more like a hybrid between only face-to-face. I mean, it would integrate more and more to the technological side of things, to integrate more into e-learning and so on. So what I like to see is that for me, I'm a piano student, so we have international professional groups like the ISPO, the International Society of Prosthetic Orthotics. So what I like to see is for those international professional groups to provide more like organizing events, to not just e-learning and learning materials online, but to use the fact that they are a global groups with members from around the globe. So they will organize more events to integrate, to foster the formation of relationships for students so that they could mix and match students for cultural or academic exchange. So to provide a platform for more chance of interactions and build on those events by these professional groups and using that as an advantage for them to do so.
Oh, that's a really interesting answer, because I think we always have the problem that the younger people have different idea of looking at things, and they have their own wants, and then the older people like me, we do what we want to do the same thing over again, and so we're too cautious. So I think that's a good point, that we need to think about what we can do. So thank you very much. I appreciate your answer. Okay, great. And now I'll talk to the other guy in the room with me. So I think I better mute. But back.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I already apologize if I wear a mask, yeah, because we are more people here, so it's fine. So to me, the new norm seems that is already in place in different sectors, in our daily life, in education, sport, etc. So as a former postgraduate student, actually I can appreciate that as compared to the past, although the chance of exchange program, like what Select and France said, has been decreased or even completely missed, but also there are more fair, equal opportunities to university students to join online webinars, conferences, and maybe some short courses. And maybe some good news that I heard that, for example, the arrangement of joint programs between different universities, between, for example, developed universities and also the developing countries. And this is, to me, it looks good. And I think this is the opportunity that we could not be provided to the old student previously. But with this increase of need for switching to the online platform, I think this is a new point that has been achieved. Yes. And also, it seems that due to the travel restriction, I think that current situation may take maybe 1 or 2 more years. And at the same time, I believe that all parties, including the teachers and the students, have put forward so much efforts to deal and adapt with the new technology facilities. And I think that even once we back to the, the post-COVID era, so still some of the technologies that has been used will be continue to be implemented by students and teachers. And I think this is what exactly mentioned by Select. So it means that it will be a hybrid mode. And this is the mode that I can appreciate that will happen in the future. Yeah, thank you. I don't know.
Are you mute? Yeah, I don't know if the other people heard. I had the echo, but I'm in the same room. But I think obviously we need to figure these things out. I don't know if MS would like to comment, or I can comment myself. Doesn't matter to me.
Well, I can comment shortly because of time. I think
Sure.
the so-called new normal actually is a transitional form of practices from time to time in order to cater the relevant developments and evolvements. I think we need to learn to accept the presence of uncertainties and to prepare for changes. So I think resilience, capacity building would be helpful to adopt any changes. So that means if we can have a good capacity building on flexibility and resiliences, we are ready to any changes, because the changes is out of our control. But if once we well equip ourselves, and then we can prepare for any changes. Okay, maybe give some time to Ivan. Can you have some quick?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
How but yeah, I'll tell you what. We could pour a lot of resources into, instead of the mobility aspects of internationalization. So instead of recruitment and exchange, which, I mean, I take care of a lot of the exchange students and non-local students. We just have fewer, right? They're not going to come here. We actually are hoping that they won't be, just because of less risk, right, to our health. The issue is with the thing about competencies is we can learn and grow and develop anywhere. If we pour more resources into the worm that has built that cocoon around itself, then in due time, when things become unfrozen, it becomes a butterfly and it flies out and it becomes mobile, right? So that's why we want to really focus in on this educational cocoon. That's the way I look at it. Because then the butterfly will be all prepared and nurtured and well developed enough to be mobile. And what we're discovering is that even while they're mobile, the resources spent on the mobility aspects are not building the competencies oftentimes the way it should be. Now, I've taught standalone service learning and education abroad at my previous universities, and that tends to be what I have assessed, is that without the proper mentorship across, there's evidence to point that the intercultural competencies don't actually grow, even if they have that level of exposure. It's the level of exposure plus the coaching, mentorship, and in fact, the student affairs that come around that to bolster that experience and internalize it for the students. So that can happen, that would happen, have to be happening in the end beyond the classroom, together, collaboratively, etc. That's my quick take on it.
Okay, thank you very much. So for the moment, that'll be the last word from Poly U. And now we'll go on to our friends from Baptist U. Okay, so I have a problem that my font is really small. So anyway, okay, so we'll ask the same question. Natalie, are you still there?
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, great. So again, we're going to ask you. So and then we'll follow up. So we'll try to come in on the Baptist University perspective, and then we'll hear from you and Theresa, and then we'll hear from Mike too from UST. So again, the question, just to be friendly to our audience, ideally, what would you like to see as the defining feature of the new normal of internationalization past the pandemic?
Well, I totally support that. After the pandemic, it would remain the mixed mode of teaching. And nowadays we're learning day by day. We used to have high expectation. Now our expectation is lower and lower, and just by learning from this updating situation. And again, same, I shared the experience that I was about to exchange in the US. Then I couldn't go because of the pandemic. But I joined a virtual exchange program from HKBU, which allowed me to catch up with Netherlands, Rebel University Nijmegen. I stayed up until like 2 a.m. every week to take their courses. But also I could say it's kind of like internationalization, which is no longer limited by geographical boundaries. You can join many courses online right now, as many are being conducted via Zoom, which is like a new normal for everybody. And for my club activity, we have MU and Modern United Nations conferences, which is very international. And we always have this different time zones participate from different countries. And it's very nice to find a way to synchronize the conference for each one of the participants. So I'd say that the new normality is not the best option we have like before, but neither it's not the worst. I'd like to say it's like a second worst option we have, but still it's where the opportunity stands, and we need to be optimistic. Yeah.
I have to work on my mute. It's very bad timing. Thank you. Okay, Theresa, if you wanted to jump in, please.
Yeah, I think Natalie has shared her view, and I totally agree with her that the new normal is like kind of like an upscale of inbound and outbound exchange virtually, because in the past we might not found it like feasible to do virtual exchange, but we found that like after the previous year, we found that it is actually feasible, and we would really like to continue this mode, because we found like intercultural interaction and engagement should be without physical boundaries. And I think Betty and Wendy earlier on talked about what we can do is like, I remember there's a COIL, collaborative online international learning, which in the past, people might not aware that things can be collaborative like virtually, but now we can do it, and we can like collaboratively solve global issues together. So I think this is the way forward.
Okay, thank you, Theresa. As I mentioned earlier, we thought we would ask Mike at this time and see if he could kind of bounce on their perspective and give us his own perspective. So again, we're listening to colleagues from different universities. We just heard the colleagues from Baptist University, and now we'd like to hear Mike from Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So Mike, please.
Okay, well, we used to be having a very international campus because we have a lot of exchange student, exchange in, exchange out student in the HUSD campus. But this year, of course, we cannot do it. I mean, at least physically, we can do it. At the very beginning, a student find very difficult, especially in the business school, they need to form groups to do a lot of group works. And then they, especially for freshmen. But then after a few months, they have already get used to it. I mean, the learning environment in online mode and then even probably mixed mode. Right now, I can see, I mean, from the program perspective and the university perspective, there are I think two main issues. One is under this new normal, can we still be able to continue to do hybrid learning? Because the hybrid learning actually is there are a lot of, there are a lot of pressure to the teachers. There are a lot of pressure to even to the student, but and also to the university. And then, so this is one of the, I think, the question that we probably want to think about. The other thing is that, okay, so we have done some study, and then from which then we know that, okay, so in order to be successfully implementing the online mode of learning, so one of the very, very critical elements from our study is the student-student interactions, from which that probably, I think, the internationalization will play a very, very important role. And somehow, unfortunately, okay, so the instructor-student interaction play a very, very minor role in this perspective. So we don't know why, but then that's, I think, from the statistical findings that I think probably I just share with all of you, and then, well, probably you can, think about. Yeah, thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I like how everyone, if we can bring in our own disciplinary background. so Mike brings in the power of statistical thinking to help our team. That's really great. And that's why I do genuinely like about working at a university, because you just, so many people have so many different areas, and you go down these weird little valleys and learn things and stuff. So it's always a really rewarding experience and great to be at a university. I'm going to follow up now. I think we'll talk with our keynote guests and see if we can fit them in here and see what they think of the discussion so far and any kind of thoughts. So maybe Betty, if you have a second.
Sure. I think I want to reflect a little bit and say I think it's really interesting to have these interdisciplinary, cross-professional area discussions between students and having a very strong student voice on the panel, as well as people like myself and people in the different universities, because that is an intercultural conversation. And I think we can start to see the value of that intercultural conversation by seeing the wisdom from the students who have recognized the value of hybridity, which is in itself intercultural as well, and the value of innovation and taking risks, trying new things. I was reflecting the other day on my own age, as well as because I find I've had to learn very quickly to adapt to new platforms during I'm not entirely comfortable with that. I've had to get my daughter to help me with some of those things. She gets a little bit frustrated with me that I don't pick it up quickly. I think we're seeing a generational change, and I think we're hearing that generational change in the discussion, where there is a younger generation, many of whom grew up from the time they can remember will have had an iPhone or something in their hands. So they're some electronic object. So they're going to be much more comfortable in this environment where mobility of the mind through technology is much more important to them, perhaps, than physical mobility. I think it is. I think if you said you can not, if I said I'll take away your phone and you can go on exchange instead of having a phone, that would not be a popular option with any student. All right. So I think we're seeing that transition. I think we're seeing that happening through an intercultural discussion. And the challenge now, I think, is for those of us in the old mindset, in the old way of doing things, to make those changes and catch up, I guess, with students. But I'll also say that I think what's happening in Australian universities, sadly, as a result of the pandemic, is that we don't have as many resources. And so we have had to shed a lot of staff. A lot of staff have lost their jobs in Australian universities. They tend to be older people, and they're being replaced by younger people. So I think we're going to see a cultural shift in institutions as well, as a new generation of younger academics come through, and we start to see some of these interesting things happening around innovation, around change. And for me, if I could sum up, I would say what I would like to see the new normal of internationalisation being is that kind of hybrid model where you get the best of both worlds. You can prepare students to go abroad. You can have their minds be mobile before they're physically mobile, and that we don't go back. We don't hark back to the past once we are able to travel again. We don't become as addicted to flying and as addicted to educational tourism as we have been, and that we are more focused on deep intercultural engagement at home with a very broad view of what culture is. Gender, age, profession, all of those things. And those complex models that have been built up around intercultural competence, I think most of them you can apply in those other situations. So that's, I could say lots more, but that's enough for now because there are other people to speak. And another question, I think. But Wendy hasn't spoken yet.
Yeah, Wendy, please jump in. Hello. Yeah, Betty, you're on mute again, so I don't know.
Wendy, you need to unmute yourself.
Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
Virtual citizen. And forgot that I was. Yeah, look, I won't say I'd like to get on to the next question, but I guess I see it as quite an exciting time. Can you hear me? Sorry, my internet's just become unstable, it says. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. One of the disadvantages of working virtually, isn't it? Yeah, look, I think I don't think that we're going to return, I don't think we'll see a return to international travel anytime soon. And then when we do, it will be quite different anyway. So I'm really quite excited about this. We've got plenty of time, I think, to really get creative in the space. So, you know, and I absolutely love the project that came out of Hong Kong Baptist Uni, for example. That was such an exciting project, and I think we're going to see lots more of that sort of stuff. Really creative. And with Betty, I'm with Betty, like we need to be working with students as partners in the design of these projects. We really need to be learning from them And I think this whole move into the virtual space and the reliance on technology has really shown, this is one area that we really do need to be learning from students. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, so we can move on to the next question, I think.
Okay, great. So I'll go up to the next question now. Wendy, we're aware that your bandwidth is weak and you're okay, but you're just on the edge. So stay strong for us for 15 more minutes and call the mayor or whatever you do. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I think, Theresa, I'm going to start with you this time. And maybe I'll ask you first and I'll flip the script. I'll ask you and then I ask the student, because we get in the other thing where we get the students to talk, but the teachers talk about, it's anyway. So this question is, and I'll say it, and I think my friends will put it in the chat so you can read it. What do you see as the main obstacle to achieving your preferred new normal? That is the one possible way to overcome that obstacle. So what's the big thing stopping us? What's blocking us? And how do we act, I guess? Theresa, I'll start with you.
Sure. I think it's a very short answer. Buy-in. Buy-in from faculty and buy-in from students as well. Don't think that the students would buy in the idea. We did have receive complaint from students about like mixed mode or virtual exchange, even for virtual exchange.
Really?
Yes. They have all sorts of like different questions and complaints at some point, but then of course they are all very good. We work closely, work in partnership with our students, so we can settle like different, we overcome all the obstacles, majority of the obstacles, if not all. If also and the readiness of the university as well as like also the faculty and the students. I think one thing is like the infrastructure has to be like good enough to facilitate these kind of change, or else no one would like to jump into this ship. So that's I think the most important thing is the infrastructure, and then of course you have to provide support to the staff and students, or else they cannot like prepare themselves to change. Yeah, that's my short answer.
Okay, great. And so maybe we can ask Natalie what you think from Baptist University.
Well, I was sharing that this new normal actually is quite good for reaching out, despite the geographical boundaries. But actually, for like in Hong Kong, for integration, I'm very skeptical about using Zoom and everything. I remember there was one like welcoming session for freshmen, and we were like having fun on Zoom, and we put on our mask and we go to the elevator and we don't recognize each other anymore. It's almost ridiculous as well that you are teaching people on Zoom that when you're communicating, you should remain eye contact while you're just looking at the camera. And so I would say it could never, like human interaction, genuine interaction in terms of communication could never be replaced by Zoom. And so the possible way to overcome, I'd say, to eliminate the usage of Zoom, like if you can get in touch, it's better, because this is needed for human. And as we're nurturing this kind of new things, I think what we can do is to try to remain the contact, and so that's my point.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that way, but then we also know that we have to change. So I think I'd like, I think we need to think about when can I hold it, when can I save my time and energy just with meetings and stuff like that. Maybe there's a certain, what kind of teaching can be done online and stuff like, I think there's a lot of stuff we need to examine. We're not saying we're never going back, but let's figure out what we can do online. You know, I mean, just that, you know, if you tell students online or face-to-face, 9 o'clock, well, if it's online, I could sleep to 8:55 and roll out of my bed and be ready to do it. Okay, so thanks for your answer. I'll break format. Let's see. I really want to go back to Poly U. So even though, I mean, he's a nice guy, but whenever he talks, there's an echo. But I'm going to try, and I'm going to ask Babek, who's in the same room as me, if he'll answer this question. So Babek, what do you see as the main obstacle to achieving your preferred new normal? That is the one way to overcome that obstacle.
Okay.
And I'll mute my mic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. John. So I totally agree with Natalie. I think the biggest challenge and the difficulty of this new norm is the lack of good communication, because suppose that once you go and shift to the online, you just lost the physical eye-to-eye contact that you may have. So many students may also not be that attentive. For example, just you hold the session, so students suppose that they are there, but they may get easily busy with other stuff, while it can be less and less in physical contact that you have during the previous normal class that we already had. So still, it seems that within the past post-pandemic era, it seems that we need some sort of hybrid mode, similar to what, for example, in our course in P&O, because what we are doing is the hybrid mode, because we cannot replace many items, like, for example, the patient visit to be replaced by the online mode. So you need to have those stuff, but also take advantage of this information that you took during all these years with these 3 to 4 years during the online platform. So the hybrid mode probably would be better. And also, for my own experience, if I would like to say, is that I took the biggest advantage of mingling with locals, non-locals, and overseas students. I mean, during the co-curricular activities that I had in the student halls, rather than the curricular subjects that previously were straightforward nature of many subjects, which were limited to the level of interaction of standalone completion of some assignment. So I think that just my humble suggestion, I don't know whether it's possible or not in terms of the programming, but whether it would be possible even in the curricular programs to integrate some co-curricular parts. Keep going. To consider some co-curricular parts, for example, just intercultural introduction of the students toward each other, maybe in the first session or second session, is some sort of ice breaking in order to get them involved better, rather than just, combining them together to complete the task, and that's all. So, because if they do that like this, they just consider that one as a task. But if you are going to some sort of co-curricular activity, you are trying to help them mingle with each other, so to learn about their intercultural competence, and it might be more helpful to them to get them more involved even in the future to make some sort of relationship, probably. Hopefully, this is my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, that's I absolutely agree. The co-curriculum, if you read about it, and students live on campus, there's all these magical moments. You know, ideally what you would want is students take a class together, you know, and they walk back and they're still talking about the class, and they get to the, you know, there's some kind of activities that bring them together, and it's a whole kind of design. But you realize that the university was originally set up, I think, in just the classes were the be-all. But then we realized that actually they learn much better outside of the classes, which for teachers, we have to be humble and just accept it. But it is some kind of harsh truth sometimes. Okay, maybe I think that's Ivan's direction, but Ivan, we're fighting the clock. So bottle your brilliance and give us please.
First of all, there's no brilliance, but from Sister Natalie and Brother Babak, basically to your points, we require all the students who are in our programs that they must be, and we tell them when we market our programs, that they must have their videos on, if possible. I mean, if technically if it's possible, for them to get that whatever credit they can get for it, whether it be a readmission into the residences or whatever. If they want that credited to their scores, they have to have it on. And we know when they're off because when we break out to breakout rooms, so sometimes we break out to many different breakout rooms, right?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
if they're silent and they don't break out to the breakout rooms, then they're not there. Or so it's kind of obvious. And we take a couple of, we do spend a good amount of time to keep them accountable for that. Otherwise, the programs are kind of useless because it all depends on our communication increasing in those different competencies within communication and all that. We really have to. Now, we can do some of those things on Zoom. Not everything, some things, and a lot, like you said, Sister Natalie, a lot is lost. So we are waiting. So if we can meet in fours, we'll spend the extra effort to make those fours very valuable and essential to those programs, so that they can continue, even if they have their masks on, they can continue to interact differently and actually more naturally, supposedly.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Let's jump back to some PolyU students. So are Fran and Select still there? Whoever wants to jump in first.
Sure,
And
we're here.
yeah, please. So what's the main obstacle, and what can we do to overcome that obstacle?
Yeah, so for me, I think the main obstacle is the online approach cannot reach the same effectiveness as face-to-face teaching, especially for some programs that need more hands-on practice, such as my and Select's department. We need more hands-on and maybe touching the design of different products or facing or patient, like this kind of hands-on practice. In this case, like the last time I mentioned the the study trip with the American students. So at that time we changed the online mode, and just like the American students should have some just like meeting with the patient, then send a message to us, then we discuss about the case. And in this case, we just like it's like a case study. We are the assistants, but not have some so much feeling about engagement. In this case, I think the effective is not that good because we did not engage too much into this kind of service trip or maybe project. So I think sometimes it may be better to have the hybrid program, just like we can have some physical teaching and maybe some communication it can be changed to online in this kind of mode, I think.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just okay, so let's think about that, and let's ask Select if you'd like to answer about the main obstacles.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
So basically, a friend just said what I originally want to set.
Perfect.
Well, hands-on skills, right? Hands-on skills, which means that we need to work on them. Hands-on skills are not the same without the hands-on, right? So even if it is like virtual reality, like augmented reality, it can only act as a supplemental materials to the actual experience that we experience by having a face-to-face, by having with a meeting with patients and so on. So what I would like to talk about is about those examples of supplemental materials, right? What could be done in an online environment is like virtual documentation of the case. We have a case study, a virtual documentation from the first visit and all the way to the follow-up. So clinical cases from different practitioners around the globe, so that we will have a case study on different cases in different countries, and we'll also have the experience to study on practices in different countries, which can be quite different and novel. For students in Hong Kong, we can have a different approach to the same case from students in Germany, students in US, and so on. So I think that would be quite interesting to to know how things works internationally. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. Could we hear from MS about that? And if you want to, you can either ride on Select's comments, or you can answer for a little bit of for yourself the main obstacle and ways to overcome it.
Okay, let me quickly reply to your concern. Actually, I think for the hardware, the PolyU already built a very good hardware to deal with, like the colleagues from the ITS and also EDC, your center, had offer a lot of support to academic staff and teaching staff to prepare for this online teaching. Well, but some, as I think Select and Frank just mentioned, cannot be replaced by some virtual environment. Has to have some hands-on in order to enrich the students' real learning experiences. So these are the potential obstacles to certain disciplines. Okay, it varies from disciplines to disciplines, definitely. Okay, give you back the time, John.
Okay, thanks, MS. And we'll kind of we'll travel over to Mike now and hear from his perspective. So Mike, what do you see as the main obstacle, and what's your idea? What's the best way to overcome that obstacle, I should say?
Let me share a little bit about the program that I'm leading. We in the program we have more than 80% non-local students. So they used to fly to Hong Kong, attend lectures in Hong Kong, and then graduate. But this year, okay, so they may not be able to come even. So at the very beginning, okay, so we have to deal with their visa. Okay, so whether they have to, whether they want to renew their visa, whether they want to come to Hong Kong, and then we do a survey. And then eventually, okay, so many of them actually, they want to come to Hong Kong. Why? Because they want to communicate. They want to make new friends, attend the lectures in the campus physically. So that's why we quickly arrange everything. So in a hybrid mode. And then, okay, so what I see, I mean, the major problems, major difficulties about the communication, because if we do everything online, actually, it's very difficult for the student to communicate sometimes. Okay, so of course, there's a convenience because, as John mentioned, they don't need to travel. But on the other hand, okay, so they may not be, they may not be so focused on, their learning and study. So eventually, okay, so I can tell you, eventually, more than 50% of the students come to Hong Kong, even during the pandemic, more than 50%. And then on average right now, we are running a hybrid mode. On average, we are talking about more than 30% of the students physically in the campus, every lecture, more than 30%.
Wow.
And okay, so at one time, we have we have close to 40 students in the classroom that actually testing our limit because of the social distancing restriction. Okay, so we have to have all the hygiene measure in place. But then I can tell what I want to share is that the students actually really like it because now during that particular physical face-to-face lectures, we send our staff before the lecture and then talk to the student and try to understand their need, understand their difficulties because they actually travel from mainland China, from Thai, Hong Kong because of the lectures. So that's why we don't want to talk to them and then try to understand whether we can help. Okay. In fact, there are a lot of issues. Okay, so for foreign students, and then that's actually is about the intercultural things. For us, okay, so who live in Hong Kong and then teach in Hong Kong, we don't know. But then for them who travel to Hong Kong and attend a lecture, and then they even find difficulties to come to the campus at the first time because they don't have a university card. They don't have a student card. So I want to highlight, now if you go down to the student level, go down to the program level, there are a lot of things that we have to hear from the student. I'm very happy to, to learn from Natalie, Silak, Baba. Okay, so Hang.
Fran.
Actually, this is actually very interesting and very important to the instructors. And then, so that's why, okay, so I would say, the major difficulty is about the communication, because I don't think there's a way to replace face-to-face interactions by online mode. No way. But, okay, so that's a reality. We only can do hybrid. Okay, the best we can do. But then treasure this kind of opportunity, even though we have only, say, very few chance to attend a physical lectures. Then I think, the physical interaction is very, very important, and it play a very, very important role. That's what I feel. Okay, so as an instructor, as a program director, and then actually even probably to a student perspective. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you, Mike. It's good to see you too. Yeah, that you raise a really challenging point though, because I've read some old literature where they challenge. We're a really good sociologist, and he said, online learning is ersatz learning. It's fake. It's and so you have these strong opinions around it, and then but I think that's what we do at the university. We have all these smart guys collecting statistics and all this stuff, and we can figure it out. Okay, I think MS, we can wrap this up by asking our guests what they think, and then we can call it a day and be very grateful for all the kindness. So I'm hoping that we can get a little back and forth action like we had before, toggling between I'll let them decide anyway. I don't want to be prescriptive, but I'll switch over to Betty now. So Betty, and just to, if I could, I don't know where I put the question.
I know what the question is. The question
you wrote
is
the question.
The main obstacle and one way to overcome that obstacle. And I'm having trouble choosing between two obstacles. And one obstacle is pedagogy, and the other the solution to that is pedagogy.
You sound
so
like
if I can have two, then I'll say that I think the main obstacle is fear of new, and fear that online will take over. I don't believe it will ever take over, because as we've heard from everyone, you cannot replace the face-to-face. You just can't. There are some, but good pedagogy and good design will, in a hybrid model, be much more efficient. It will enable you to do the face-to-face much better. Nobody wants to have a baby delivered by somebody who only learned to do it on a virtual reality baby and mother. You don't want that. It's not suitable. But there are some things that can be better done online, and some things that must be done face-to-face. So let's have that conversation. Let's have that. Let's embolden and enable people to overcome that fear that if they try something online and fail, that will be held against them. Fear of failure, fear of negative feedback from students, fear of negative feedback from managers. But if the students are your partners in that, and if you're talking to them about how you go about the pedagogy and the design, then they're not so likely to be your critics and your judges, and neither are your managers. So that's, I think, it's pedagogy, and it's overcoming fear and somehow supporting people through that transition. But I think you need not fear that online will take over completely. I don't believe it will. I don't believe students will allow it. I don't believe faculty members. I don't believe even those young people who grew up with iPads actually will ever give away the face-to-face. I think that's a fear of some parents, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
But there are troubling reports of some academics who don't want to go back to the classroom.
For different reasons, maybe.
No, you're right. I mean, but another challenge. Okay, please.
Wendy.
Yeah, look, I would say much the same. I think I was thinking of fear also. I think it's change. So perhaps I'll just use slightly different wording. I think the biggest obstacle is the human difficulty with dealing with change, and I think I've heard that from various speakers across the afternoon. There's a lot of emotion. There's fear. There's a sense of loss and grief, and so on that we're dealing with. What we're needing to do is really think in very new ways. We're really needing to think, it's not a matter of online or not online. We are entering a kind of a hybrid world, and how that hybridity sort of works itself out will be a very dynamic sort of question anyway, depending on what's happening within our context at any particular time. So I think I guess that's the challenge. That's human nature, I guess. And I think the response to that is firstly acknowledging it. And I don't think institutions really encourage us to acknowledge our feelings about this very, very often. But it's also to go back to that original point we made, I think on the first or second slide, that it's up to us to create the new normal. The new normal kind of is an evolving phenomenon, and we can never sort of be there yet, to quote Shrek. So I think we're in this very creative, we can see ourselves as being in a very creative space. But the obstacle there is that we need to give that time. Creating something really quite new around this hybridity it takes time, and it takes time from everybody has to give it time. Students and faculty and other staff and management, we all need to give it time to create something anew. And and I guess that's a matter of a message that we need to keep giving back to our university, is that we need time and we need resources, we need support to help us all work together to really reimagine and recreate something that's apt for this particular moment in our history. So yeah, big obstacle, but also lots and lots of opportunity for creativity.
I thought someone was speaking up, but I guess not. Okay, great. And so I think I should have flopped the order. I should have saved Betty for last, but you're a team, so I guess that's okay, huh? Okay. My manners. MS Wong, would you like to say a last word before? Well, we're gonna take a feedback in a second, but I thought maybe we could slip in the last word from you, and then we'll ask for the feedback.
Okay, thank you, John. Well, I would like to say a lot of things. A lot of thanks for John Sakers, for the very great facilitator for this whole afternoon, and also again for our guest speakers, Professor Betty Leask and Dr. Wendy Green, and also Dr. Lee, Dr. Pan, and Ivan Chung, as well as the co-principal investigator, myself and Theresa Kwong. And also, as we all agree that why we are here, because of our students. So very thankful for Select, Frank, Natalie, and Babak. Thank you very much. Give all of us big hands. Of course, this is, I would see this as a beginning for our interactions with the bigger populations. So this is an ongoing process. We should not say that it's the end of the project. Actually, as a certain extent, is the beginning of another step, another stage to move forward. So we'd like to have a continuous collaboration with all of you. Okay, thank you very much again. Thank you. Give you back the time, John.
Yeah, thank you, MS. So
one more thing before I still have our team would like to thank for Percy, as well as our Kubert, and also Sammy, and also colleagues from EDC, the technical support as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. It's our honor to help you. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you can see in the chat, we've put the feedback form there, and so we'll give you a chance to do that as we close up shop. Okay, so really happy to be here. Keep it in mind. I can't. We're really happy to have our friends from Baptist University and Hong Kong University of Science and Technology here. And I'll speak about this in general PolyU terms, but I think they fit the same. I think we're all moving in this direction. And like you've heard today, there's a lot of good aspects. So I have the same problem that Betty had, that it's really uncomfortable for me, the online, and it makes me nervous. And I'm not nervous now because game's over, but it really, I worry about it. But if I did face-to-face, I wouldn't worry at all. But it's kind of ridiculous. My new stupid line is, it's like worrying my chalk is going to break if I'm a teacher, so I mean, it's a problem, but so what? Let's not be that small. But I think we have to move on and think about this and solve it, use our scholarly minds to solve it. I mean, that's the thing. We have these people who dedicate their lives to figuring this stuff out, and then there's common guys like me, and I want good practices, good things to do, but we need the people doing the research so we can do the smart thing. And I think I'll leave it at that. So please, if you be so kind, fill out the feedback, and then we will see you. There will be many events in this area coming up at PolyU, and I suspect our colleagues at other schools have the same approach, that they too will have a lot of things coming. But let's seize the moment. Okay, thank you very much. Great day.